Why did the Istanbul agreements of 2022 mean capitulation and death for Ukraine? This is what we will discuss today. I thought I don't have to talk about this. I thought I could avoid this topic just because it was long ago and I didn't think it's relevant for today. But apparently it is, so I have to spend the time and explain what actually happened. Hello there, I am Alina. Welcome back to my channel Enough of Propaganda. Please like, subscribe, share my videos. Let's make truth available for everyone. Today we will discuss the very beginning of Russian full-scale invasion of Ukraine in 2022 and what happened in Istanbul. Of those so-called agreements which actually never happened. But apparently it's as crucial to know the truth about the 2022 Istanbul agreements. Because Putin is once again spreading lies and disinformation and false statements on the matter. The portrayal of the negotiation process in Istanbul as a territorial exchange for the ceasing fire, ceasing hostilities is a lie. Putin proposed Ukraine's capitulation without any security guarantees. Ukraine would have to abandon its army, its partnership with the West regarding arms, and any guarantees of security. In fact, it was about the destruction of Ukraine as a sovereign state, followed by the physical seizure of the country's territory. Ukraine would simply have been unable to defend itself in the event of Putin's inevitable next attack. As I often do when I'm discussing something, I can show you some footage, so you didn't get bored listening to some boring information, perhaps. This is Rostov-on-Don in Russia, hospital, which is overwhelmed with wounded soldiers, and many of them in the corridors, on the floor and everything, like there is no space for them, and soldiers are frustrated, complaining that instead of constructing an additional hospital, local officials are preoccupied with preparing New Year celebrations, which is a big deal in Russia. But let's continue talking about the Istanbul agreements. We need to understand that any war eventually ends, either with the victory of one side, a ceasefire without clear winners, or on the capitulation of one of the parties. But the most important aspect of any peace agreement is the issue of guarantees for peace and security. The negotiations in the spring of 2022 had nothing to do with peace. It was a capitulation that would have stripped Ukraine of its sovereignty and security, and here is why. In this video, I will tell you the most important information about the Istanbul agreements, which often missing in the comments of the English-speaking YouTubers, for example, and so on. And number one, any sovereign state, and Ukraine is a sovereign state. If somebody still needs proofs, I have a video of that, proving that Ukraine is a sovereign state. And one of the three countries who first acknowledged the Ukraine's sovereignty was Poland, Canada, and Russia. So nevertheless, any sovereign state has rights to join any treaties, any agreements, any organizations, and so on. So one of the important parts of those agreements was limitation of Ukraine's sovereignty. Ukraine, a sovereign state, was prohibited from joining NATO and receiving assistance, weapons from Western allies, depriving the country of any chance of external support in a future conflict. While Ukraine wasn't prohibited from joining the European Union is an economic union. It has no connection to security or defense capabilities. Today we will talk about this very important article by the New York Times, and which is even more important, in the end of this article, there are links to actual documents which I will show you, because on my channel I'm telling people the truth. It doesn't matter I like it or not, it doesn't matter they like it or not. I am telling the truth and I'm backing up with the facts and evidence and video proofs of what I'm saying. These documents are proving what I'm saying, and you're welcome to read them yourself. I'll talk about them a little later. So number two, what was also important? Fake security guarantees. The agreements stipulated that aid to Ukraine in the event of the new attack could be only provided if all the guarantor countries, including Russia, agreed. Russia's veto power would allow it to block any assistance to Ukraine. Furthermore, any discussion, any decision, to provide aid would not be immediate, but after about 3 days or up to 3 days, they're gonna talk about it which will giving Russia time to seize Ukrainian strategically important territories. There are at least 3 documents which provided by the New York Times, and I'll tell you later, confirmed by actually people who were there, who were the chiefs of the delegation of Ukrainians, for example, and some of it I translated from Russian into English, but you're welcome to do it yourself, it's not a problem. So this is the documents of what they were negotiating about. So next time when somebody is basically waving a paper in front of your face, empty paper, as you can see. But if to wave it fast enough, you might don't know that the paper is clean, like Putin did in front of African delegations. It means they're lying. These are the real documents which you can see for yourself, read for yourself. Always go to the source. This is the source. What actually was discussed. In this particular document, this is Article 4, but in general, in the other documents, it's Article 5. So, page 11. This is what important. On the basis of the decision agreed by all guarantor states, will an exercise of the right of individual or collective self-defense recognized by Article 51 of the Charter of the United Nations, the guarantor states do not object to an agreed decision, will immediately provide all necessary military assistance to Ukraine. You can read it in full by yourself, but this is what important. Agreed by all guarantor states, include Russia as a guarantor state. So this is even worse than the Budapest Memorandum. They all supposed to agree. So would Russia, if the Russia attack Ukraine, agree to let guarantor states attack Russia and defend Ukraine? Because Russia attacked Ukraine? I don't think so. This document is in Russian, and it's one of the documents. It's a project, 15th of April 2022, and it was sent to President of Russian Federation. The agreement of constant neutrality and guarantees of safety for Ukraine. Again, as I said, Article 5. State guarantors and Ukraine agreed that in case of military attack on Ukraine, every guarantor state will have consultations, which would be during no more than 3 days, and so on, because it will be agreed. This is red. In red it says, all states, guarantor states, will agree, make a decision, and if one of the states say no, so they're not going to help Ukraine, so go poof, security guarantees. This is an English version. As you can see, it's a draft from the same date. Treaty of Permanent Neutrality and Security Guarantees for Ukraine. Again, here's the Article 5. On the basis of decision agreed upon all guarantor states. Number 3. Another important thing would be limitation of the army. Russia demanded that Ukraine's army be reduced to 85,000 troops. Ukraine demanded 250,000 at least. The number of tanks limited to 342 units, and artillery to 519 pieces. This is critically small. Russia lost 300 tanks in the first months of the offensive on Avdiivka. So not only would there be no security guarantees in case of a new war, but Ukraine would be forbidden from restocking its weapons stockpile, and would only be able to rely on its own limited resources, as dictated by Russia. With such a small army, Russia would have been able to capture not only Kiev, but also Lviv in just 3 days. So, the whole Ukraine would be captured very easily. That's what Russian plan was all along when Russia attacked Ukraine in 2022, to take Kiev in 3 days. But thank goodness the other countries provided Ukraine weapons eventually, and before that, many countries, include Canada, were training Ukrainian soldiers and so on. At the time, like during these 8 years of Russian war in Ukraine, which was going on for 8 years before Russia attacked Ukraine again in 2022 with full-scale invasion. Number 4. Restrictions on military power. The agreements imposed limits on the range of Ukrainian missiles, up to 40 kilometers. This would have prevented Ukraine from effectively defending itself against Russian aggression. Right now, Ukraine got approved for ATACMS, which actually small range missiles. It's not long range. But anyways, to get those 300-kilometer range, this is such a big deal. Even this is not a long range missiles. But they were proposing 40 kilometers. Number 5. Oh, here's Article 2. Ban on external aid. The Istanbul agreements forbade Ukraine from receiving foreign arms and from joining military alliances, including NATO. Even the guarantor countries were not allowed to train Ukrainian troops. Ukraine was deprived of the ability to strengthen its armed forces and receive military aid from allies. Russia demanded the complete demilitarization of Ukraine. You can read those articles. This is Article 1, Article 2. Without the consent of all guarantor states not to conduct military exercises with participation of foreign armed forces on territory of Ukraine. And so on. So basically, don't give Ukraine any weapons. Don't train Ukrainian troops. This is what it was all about. Number 6. Crimea remaining under Russian control. Russia insisted that Crimea remain under its control for 10-15 years, effectively legitimizing its annexation. Number 7. And what's Russia, the aggressor? What gonna happen to Russia? Nothing. Russia without restrictions. While Ukraine was restricted in its army size and weaponry, Russia was given a free hand to rebuild its military resources for future attacks. No restrictions were imposed on Russia. Zero. And the cherry on top, number 8. Destruction of the sanctions regime. If Ukraine had signed these agreements, it would have led to lifting of international sanctions on Russia, allowing it to freely restore its military capabilities for a future attack. This is actually interesting videos by Michael Naki about real reasons for the war, and this video of him basically talking about those Istanbul agreements as well, but this is in Russian, so I just give you a quick summary and my own information and the information from the New York Times and so on in this video. So in conclusion of what I just said, signing the Istanbul agreements in 2022 would have meant Ukraine's capitulation, its complete disarmament, the loss of Allied support, and the de facto destruction of the country as an independent state. This would have opened the way for a new Russian invasion, which Ukraine would simply not have been able to withstand. As I said earlier, in June 2024, the New York Times published the authentic documents from those Istanbul negotiations. And links to the documents you're welcome to find in the end of the article. I showed you what they are, and I personally verified these documents. And they match the information I was tracking at the time from open sources. I was watching it and in real time when it was happening, following all of this and so on. So it's confirmed by my own experience and research at the time. I especially recommend reading the first paragraph of Article 5, as I showed you, page 6. This is, as I said, it's worse than Budapest Memorandum. So, only if all the countries agreed to defend Ukraine, they will defend Ukraine. So, if Russia will attack Ukraine again, or I would say more accurately, when Russia attacks Ukraine again, it will surely vote in favor of allowing allies to help Ukraine defend itself against Russia? I don't think so. This is not what will happen. And we already know what happened in the past. Russia already attacked Ukraine in 2014. The war was going on for 8 years, and Russia already annexed Crimea and didn't even bother to annex those two so-called republics, DPR, LPR. And did it stop Russia from attacking Ukraine in 2022? No, it did not. As far as I know, in Ukraine, there was lots of controversy about this interview, Moseychuk and David Arahamiya. Who is David Arahamiya? Arahamiya was Ukraine's lead negotiator at the time of those agreements supposed to happen. So he stated in his interview on November 24th, 2023, that Ukraine neutral status was Russia's key demand during the negotiations and that Western countries were aware of the talks and advised Ukraine not to rely on security guarantees. I wonder why. We just saw why. Because there was no guarantees. Ukraine wasn't receiving anything, not even guarantees of security. Meanwhile, Russia get sanctions lifted, and nothing, no restrictions on the Russia, the aggressor. This is why. Arahhamia also refuted the claim that Boris Johnson prevented Kiev from signing an agreement that provided for Ukraine's neutrality, stating that the Ukrainian delegation has no such authority. And I personally watched this interview and remember that neither Putin nor Zelensky were present at the negotiations, and only they could have signed such agreements. So, this interview, people just took the words out of context, lied about it. This is not what Arahhamia said. He said what I just told you. And because Ukrainian isn't my language, what I did, I translated the transcript just to make sure that I understood correctly. And I did. Basically, nobody could actually sign anything there, so whatever Putin was waving his empty paper was a lie. There was nothing signed. There was just papers, propositions. One side proposed something, another side say, well, we disagree, this and that. Nothing was signed. There was no signed agreements or promises of any kind. So Putin is trying to lie that Ukrainian future liberation of territories of Kherson, Kharkov region, for example, and so on, was some sort of they agreed on something in Turkey. They did not. They did not agree on anything. Nothing was signed, and there was no Russian gesture of moving forces. Russia was kicked out of those territories by Ukraine. Ukraine beat up Russia at the time. And it wasn't really Russia, just left. This is a lie. And it's based on nothing. As Arachhamia, as a leader and chief of the delegation at the time, this is exactly what he said. There was also an article from Wall Street Journal, interesting about the same situation. But basically, after violating not only the Budapest Memorandum, but also about 400 different agreements, including at least 29 ceasefires in 2014-2015 and several more in 2022, Russia violated all of this. Could anyone seriously trust Putin's word? Ukrainians would have been left without an army, without enough arms to defend itself, without allied assistance, and without NATO's protection. Can we really be surprised that Ukraine didn't sign its own death sentence? I'm not surprised. Are you? So Putin's recent statements that someone from Ukrainian delegation signed something or that it is possible to return to the Istanbul agreements are lies. That's also why Putin has never provided any signed agreements from Ukraine. It's also a lie that Russia voluntarily withdrew from Kiev. It was driven out by Ukraine. And this is when the Russian crimes in Bucha were exposed. This is my video, the Bucha massacre, who is guilty. Bucha in 2022, Sloviansk in 2014. So you're welcome to watch what happened. Bucha wasn't something new, as I said in my previous videos. In Sloviansk in 2014, Russia was doing the same war crimes, committing, and so on. Russia was committing war crimes for the past 10 years in Ukraine. Before that, they did it in Georgia. Before that, they did it in Chechnya. Long before Bucha, Russia was exterminating Ukrainians in Sloviansk in 2014. And it continues to commit war crimes on all occupied territories. People from Kherson could tell you the same exact things. So don't fall for Russian propaganda. Let's help Ukraine stop Putin. Learn the truth and stay informed. Thank you for watching my video. Please help Ukraine as much as you can. See you later.